Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Hello, friends. You're joined by Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe for an episode of Mavs Moneyball After Dark. It's a little bit before 8 o'clock on Monday, June 27th. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing okay. It's kind of been a little bit since me and you've kind of sat down and talked.
That's really, in the off season, particularly with what we're kind of dealing with now, there's a reason we could talk every day, and then there's a reason we could talk not at all. Yeah. And so just due to the sheer amount of time we spent together over the last 6 months, I've sort of opted to leave you alone. But the course of events the last several days, going back into last week, has just sort of called into question the need for us to at least hash a little bit of stuff out. Before we start, I do want to note that I'm always a little bit reluctant to talk free agency stuff unless we're just talking pie in the sky things. But the problem is we've gotten a little more, I don't want to say professional, but just as we've, made more acquaintances in the media space, I think all of us, like Josh and I both, kind of hear more stuff. And I'm not a reporter, and I don't want to be a reporter. There's no upside for it. I've said that for years. And so but the flip side of that is I talk a lot, and I don't want to get on a podcast and say something that could inadvertently be considered reporting. So it's we've been reading, we've been following along with some of our friends and people in media that we look up to and read, like Mark Stein, for example. And, as recently as, after media day, Jake Fisher on Colin said that the Jalen Brunson thing was a done deal, and that he was telling his teammates he was done. At least he's kind of hearing this third hand, is what Jake said on Colin. And so over the next, it's been about 3 weeks, we've sort of seen a slow turning of the dial to where, well, this maybe isn't really a done deal. Tim McMahon has done some reporting on it. Mark Stein did a lot of extensive reporting following the NBA draft, where the Knicks basically declared their full intent to go after Brunson by shedding salary. And we're here on Monday night, probably 2.5 days before things sound off. And for all intents and purposes, this is done now, only we don't know the outcome. And earlier tonight on a call-in show, someone asked about Brunson, and Jake indicated that as far as he can tell right now, he thinks Brunson is going to be a New York Knick. Which, if you read Mark Stein, Mark doesn't say this in his Substack, but if you read enough NBA news, when you're seeing things like serious threat and yada yada, there's just a lot of signs that should worry you. And this was days ago. And so now we're here basically hearing that it's a done deal. And I am sort of all over the place. My initial thoughts are, I don't really like how this got reported out. I am loath to criticize anyone that does that sort of job, because you're put in the position of having to suss out information. But to do a complete 180 in a couple of weeks, The problem is, like, for Mavs fans are never going to trust Jake again.
Oh my God, I feel so bad. Yeah, that's going to be horrible.
It's already been a part of my DMs, and it's like, I know Jake, met him a long time ago when him and Tim Cato were both youths, and so it's like he's a good reporter. And so it's like sometimes you're told something, you got to go with it. Mm-hmm. And it happens. I mean, brother? I mean, there have been instances over the years where things haven't gotten published because you find out something last minute, and it's like it can really change people's jobs. And so I feel bad for Jake in that regard, because I truly do believe he was told something that just turned out to be a red herring, I guess. And so it's like, I don't really know what you do for here. So I've been talking for almost 2 straight minutes because I'm very frustrated. So where are you with this right now?
I think excuse me. The thing that I'm trying to balance is knowing Mavericks history and knowing free agency and how things work. There's still a chance for this to 180 again. So
that's true.
Knowing the Mavericks' luck and free agency, I mean, Kemba Walker was a done deal, in 2019. DeAndre Jordan was a done deal. Now, of course, his was a little bit more historic in the sense I don't think that's ever going to happen ever again. No. So, there's that. But, there's part of me that's like not wanting to rush into things because, we have – like, let's be honest. We have the pitchforks ready. They're sharpened. We've got the torches. The lighter fluid is on the torches. We're ready to light them. Like we are totally ready to go all in on this organization if Jalen Brunson gets away from this team. And so, of course, there's a part of me that's like itching to like just get started and get jump on that. Not that I enjoy it, but it's just because it is frustrating, and you just kind of want to yell about it. So I'm trying to do my best like this week to try to temper that because I know that things change really fast and there's cold feet and numbers can change and contracts can change and physicals can be failed. And, there's all sorts of variables that I'm not until, I get, we see the Stein or the Woj tweet where it's like, they have, it's it is happening. I'm just trying to temper that. But like I said, we have to talk, I feel like we kind of have to talk about it. And to be honest, this is probably like the diseased like online brain that I have. I'm almost starting to get more mad at the potential reaction to the news than the actual news itself. And that's where I know that I probably need to like log off for a little bit.
No,
and take some time because I think
you're right.
I'm getting really concerned at how this is going to get spun. If this is how it's going to go down. And it's just it's just going to pile on. It's going to really frustrate me on top of the Mavericks are potentially going to lose their second best player from a Western Conference Finals team for either nothing or, scraps from the Knicks.
Sign and trade. Sign and trade, but which seems unlikely because I just don't see why the Knicks would help Dallas.
The only way I could see it is because they still have some money that they need to move, I think, to create the max room. So this could be an easier way for them to do that, like instead of maybe having to attach a first round pick to one of their contracts they need to dump, they might be able to do it this way, but who knows?
Yeah. And to be clear, one of the things you're referencing is so Josh and I still very much, I think, correctly view ourselves as media, but we are not we're not legacy media in any stretch. Like just because Mavs Moneyball's been around for literally 20 years does not mean we're still, you're an actual like journalist. I am a fan that likes basketball a lot, but it's just when you're referencing sort of the things you're going to get frustrated by, it's the already table being set reaction from sports talk radio, from newspaper people, from and not everybody. It's just you've seen instances of it where it's like this is just fine. Is kind of the table being set.
What are you going to do?
Right? Yeah. What are you going to do? You can't do anything. And my favorite reaction was actually in our Slack about what did he say?
Clint talking about how like the Mavericks have failed in star chasing free agency for so long because the truth is those guys just don't rarely leave their teams, and now they're going to get bit because someone left their team.
Yeah. And, we've had a lot of coverage up at Mavs Moneyball about this, where we have our guy Scott, CBA Mavs, who has broken down sort of extensively why he thinks the Mavericks need to pay Brunson whatever it takes. And then this late last night, Xavier wrote sort of, it's not actually a disagreement with Scott. It's a team building thing where he says he essentially makes the argument of, if you pay Brunson too much, you are locked into this course. And there's some good back and forth about it, because like the dialogue is genuinely interesting. My buddy Seth Partnow, if I can get him on the show at some point the next week, actually agrees with Xavier in saying where it's just like, you don't want to be paying a non-top 50 player a top 30 salary, which is what kind of we're heading towards. And so the whole thing is very interesting, because it's like the Knicks have single-handedly drove his price up, despite how Brunson had an incredible performance this year and in the playoffs, but he also disappeared just enough. And to make him your centerpiece in an offense in New York, which has Julius Randle, also a max contract guy who plays a very weird, inefficient game, and then RJ Barrett, one of the most disturbingly inefficient players. If you really go look at that dude's number, he shot 40% from the field last year. And it's just like, they don't have shooting. Emmanuel quickly exists, who's a really interesting player. Like and Brunson's going to go there and take shots. Like, I don't understand I understand the money, but I don't understand like the team that they're building, because what they're, in my opinion, they're kind of effectively making the Knicks worse and the Mavericks worse, but that's kind of a different, it's like, right. It's very, very, very odd. And so I sit here and I process this differently, where I'm trying not to get too angry, because I've just done that. It's done, but it's like, I've had enough time to think about this where I don't think it's going to be a shock either way, where it's, if he resigns, I'll say, okay, interesting, good. If he doesn't resign, I'll say, I understand why he had to do that, because that's like generational money after his dad was like an undrafted player and has, ground out for everything they needed. And it's a frustrating situation, because you and I, for the better part of 4 years now, have been told that we are excessively negative about everything that goes on with this team. And there's some truth in that. We haven't always been fair. But by and large, when it comes to team building, you and I, who have two very different approaches to like being fans of basketball, have been on the same page about this. And this is, while them not offering the extension is a mistake, I sort of think that's a little bit narrative driven. This goes back to years of bad team building and execution from Donnie Nelson. And the Mavericks are going to be paying for this, for the, what might be the extent of Luka's contract with the Mavericks. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, it's a series, like, that's why it's like what are you going to do? Well, it's just like a series of events leads to this outcome if this is what happens. And the Mavericks were in control up until now. So that's the frustrating part. It starts with 2018 when they gave a second rounder, I don't know what kind of contract he got, like a 3 or 4 year contract, which I think it was guaranteed, and that messed with his restricted free agency status. So it meant that he wouldn't be a restricted free agent. And the reason they did that is because they were wanting to chase Giannis, and they wanted money opened up if he was going to be a free agent, either this summer or last summer.
Which, let's be clear, that was bad at the time.
It's bad.
Dumb strategy.
It was doubling down on the same thing they've been doing for the last 10 years that never
10
worked.
years. Yeah. So just to rehash it, because I'm an asshole, it's Dwight Howard and Chris Paul all over again. It's Mike Conley and Hassan Whiteside in 2016. It's their failed plans on repeat. Now, if I'm an optimist, and I am feeling, broadly speaking, optimistic, because when you have Luka Doncic, you have a good team. There's a Slovenian Hoops basketball account that, basically retweeted one of our articles and was like, everybody needs to stop being such a grump about this. And my thought and response was, well, number one, most Luka Doncic fans first kick the shit out of the Mavericks when they don't do well enough to build around Luka. So it's like, that's kind of an odd position. But number two, I do kind of agree with that sentiment, where it's like Luka makes a lot of things possible. But at the same time, it's just, some of these things are so telegraphed, where we didn't like in 2019 saying, what are you guys doing with your team building? And for us to get sort of pushback and say everything's going to be just fine. There's a real valid argument to be made that the Mavericks have lucked out by the deals they haven't done over the last decade as much as the deals that they've missed,
Yeah, which kind of goes back to like what were the planning is just like it's not necessarily the slam dunk argument to defend the Mavericks free agency decisions by saying, well, imagine if they actually did the things that they were planning to do, they would be even worse. Like no, it's not kind of like the win that you think it is, because then it's like, why are they continuously planning around these awful outcomes, potential outcomes? So like that's a whole another part of it. But it's just, you're right in that like it's not going to be a doomsday scenario if he does leave. But the thing is that just and I agree with Xavier in a vacuum and Seth in the sense of like Jalen Brunson's not a $28 million per year player. He's probably not even a $25 million per year player. And it's actually, I don't know, but it just feels like the Mavericks keep getting this bad luck. And it's like, at a certain point, when is it like, if it keeps happening over and over again in terms of like this bad luck that they're experiencing with free agency or roster building, it's like, well, when is it on them? And it's like, to me, it's not getting an extension done, even if it's maybe been blown out of proportion by the Brunson camp, which we don't know. I'm just, just throwing.
No, but like Xavier made a really interesting point in his article where he's just like, what were our pieces going to fetch? Because it's a contract matching situation at a certain point. When you pay Dorian Finney-Smith what he was getting paid, which until his extension was a steal, and Jalen Brunson making 1.5, those in-season trades are exceptionally difficult because you have to be within a certain percentage of salary.
Right, which means you have to attach junk, and then that makes the trade less viable. Because
or picks, which Dallas doesn't have.
Right. It just and I know it's a new front office, so you can say, you want to say that this lacks long-term vision, and then you're like, well, they just got started, so who knows what the long-term vision is now? Maybe they have a chance to execute it, but they had chances to extend. This new front office had multiple chances to extend him, and Mark Cuban's been here the whole time, and we all know that he has a significant say in the basketball decisions. So we can say it's a new front office, but I mean, the guy in charge is still the same in a way, like the main guy in charge. And it's just another case of like, I mean, if he leaves and like, we've gone over on the site. If he leaves and they do a sign trade with the Knicks, like they're not getting back anything worth what Brunson provides to the team. Like, let's just even if it's a sign and trade, it's not going to make up for losing Brunson. It's the Knicks are not like, just the way the CBA works. Like, it's not like they're going to get an all-star back or a comparable really good role player. Like, it's going to be Nerlens Noel and like Alex Burke. It's going to be like guys at the end of backups coming off the end of your bench potentially. So either scenario, like it's still going to be rough, and it's just like this feeling of he's really even though he's not a $25 million player, $28 million per year player, like if you look at the NBA and you look at the playoffs, and it's like you have to have good players, and like Brunson's a pretty good player, and he's 25 years old. He's not 28. He's not a center, he's not a big wing that can't dribble. Like he's an offensive, creating, ball handling point guard that can get his own shot. And good Lord, like, you say what you will about the Utah Jazz and how much of a mess they are. Not a lot of guys score 40 points in a playoff game or have that ability or that talent. And I'm not trying to like maybe puff up Brunson more than he is, but I'm just saying
very few guys that have done it in Maverick history. It's like 5 people.
And this guy's just gonna walk away for nothing. Like that's just a tough.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And so I want to state sort of unequivocally before we go any further that I think this front office has earned the benefit of the doubt for a period of time, because you make the Western Conference Finals, and before that you trade away an albatross of a contract in Kristaps Porzingis. Just those two things are pretty important to me.
Yeah.
Then they've made this very interesting move for Christian Wood, which is a low risk, I'd say medium. Yeah, great move. So there's just enough going on here to where I think that they are above some level of my normal lose my shit criticism.
I think that we at least acknowledge that, the big thing for us before the new regime took over with Nico, our biggest complaint wasn't necessarily like, they didn't get this specific, like, I don't think it was like get this specific guy. It was
Right.
more just the morass on the roster and the just kind of running into a brick wall with the same pieces over and over and over again. And I think that was more of our issue. And you look at what Nico's done, and he was part of the Reggie Bullock signing, who ended up being maybe one of their best free agent signings that they've had, and like maybe a top 2 free agent signing in the last 10 years, which is really funny to think about. Maybe top 2 or 3. And especially in terms of like impacting wins in the playoffs, like it's huge. And then so he did that, like, added a major rotation piece in Bullock, did a major roster shakeup in trading KP, did another pretty substantial roster shakeup with the Christian Wood trade, even if it was like 4 guys that didn't play. But I mean, it was still 4 guys that just weren't part of the plan that the old regime signed to like multi-year. Like Trey Burke should have never had the contract he has. You know what I mean? Like things are changing, and I know that the core, it's still Luka, and it's still Tim Hardaway will come back, and it's still Maxey and Dorian Finney-Smith, but there's enough changing around like the 3rd through 6th spot in the rotation, which is kind of what we've been begging for them to do. So that's where we know that this new regime isn't watching this roster with rose-tinted glasses, and they're ready. You can tell that they are okay with changing this thing up, which I think is kind of what we've just only been asking. Like, just change this thing up in some way. And, adding Dinwiddie and Bertans, adding Wood, getting rid of Kristaps. I mean, those were pretty big changes to the roster and the rotation. So that's where they get my, benefit of the doubt there. But again, I just want to reiterate, it's just not it's not going to be good. Like, the Mavericks will not be a better team if Jalen Brunson leaves to go to the Knicks. Like, they're going to have to find a way to get better. Like, they're going to have to make a move within the next 12 to 24 months. Like, they have to move forward. Like, it's not going to be something where the Mavericks are addition by subtraction. Like, they just flat out, they'll be a worse team if Brunson's not on it by this weekend.
Well, we should probably close it from there, because I think it's sort of a melancholy post where I'm fully willing to accept it all. I'm going to be disappointed if he leaves, and if he comes back, I will probably be excited. But this process, this process has been gross. And you and I are kind of offline at times, but it's still been like, I said this morning before anything even happened, I was like, I hope my friends survive the Jalen Brunson wars, because it's been a gross discussion, because not just because us like fans, talking about the same thing on repeat, you inevitably like delve into like circular logic and arguments over things that we don't have any control in. But then when you factor in that the reporting has been an ongoing story, which has slowly evolved into it being bad for Dallas fans, it just adds a lot of salt in the wound. And I don't know what to do with that, because this feels a little different. Whereas in years past, to all of us, it was very clear that the Mavericks were getting used as leverage, where it was like, oh, well, so-and-so's coming here. And we're like, really? Why? Like, do you remember? Like the Kemba Walker thing never made sense to me. It's like, why is Kemba Walker coming here? Like that, and then there for a while, Windhorst reported Al Hortford, I think.
Yeah, they were interested. It's just if they have cap space and agents, include them in the
leverage point where we were all like, this is interesting, but this is different, because this is one where I'm sure you could probably find in our older podcast where we were like wondering what was going to happen like 2 years into Brunson's contract. People are like, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at some point. What does that mean? And we're all like, we'll deal with it later. Well, we're here now.
Yeah. And that combined with the same people that got mad at us when we were like, this roster's not good enough. You're crazy. This roster is good enough. are going to be the same people that turn around and be like, this is fine. Even though like 12 months ago, those same people were being like, don't be mean to Brunson. He's incredible. And it's like, well, what? It's either you can't have it both ways there. And that's going to piss me off. And also just the fact that if Brunson doesn't come back, Luka will still be the only Mavericks draft pick to sign a second contract since Dwight Howard in 2003. It's like, how long is that streak going to go?
Dwight Powell.
Powell. You said Dwight Powell wasn't a draft pick, though. They didn't draft him.
You said Dwight Howard. What did you?
Oh,
did you
sorry.
mean Josh Howard.
Josh Howard.
Sorry. Brain fart. I'm like, who the heck is the last name of Howard? Yeah, it's 18 years, 19 years. And I often try to
continues.
Yeah. Well, and like one of the things is second contracts aren't as frequent as we think they are. But it's still pretty nuts. Anyways, this has been, I think, a good touch base. Hopefully in a couple of days we're
this is all stupid.
Because all this stuff starts going down Thursday evening, 5:00.
Yep.
Josh, you and I will probably be back, or I'll do a live show. Maybe both. Actually, probably both.
There'll be a lot to talk about.
Yeah, because I want to talk with you, and then if you feel like hopping on and doing, because that green room the other day. It's like 2 weeks ago. That was nuts. It was fun though. I'm glad you joined.
Fun. Yeah, I need to do that more often.
Okay, team, Kirk and Josh. I'm going to be back with Ben Zadell at some point. We needed to do the second half of our player review stuff, and I also want to get Ben's thoughts on this because Ben dips into the macabre exceptionally frequently when he's and so it's hearing, and he's been a long time Mavs fan like us, and hearing his disgust is always pretty amusing to me. All right. Check out Mavs Moneyball. We have a lot of stuff up. Xavier is posting a piece that's going up probably at midnight here on Tuesday morning, where he has, at first he said, the Mavericks shouldn't sign Brunson. Now he has two ideas for what he thinks they should do instead. And just because it's posted on our site does not mean we agree with these things, is what I will say. But I wanted it to be a distinct post because I thought it took away from his broader argument from what he was doing today. So anyways, we got a lot of good weird stuff up. Like when I say weird, it's just the likelihood that we write about this specific situation again is just not going to happen. So we're covering it from all different angles. Kirk and Josh, and we've appreciated you listening, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and we will talk with you guys a little later in the week.